Our meeting tonight is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am very grateful tonight for this church and for all I am learning about Christian Science here. Before I came to this church, I had made a complete mess of my life. So when God worked through my practitioner to bring me here, I had nothing to fall back on and nothing to go back to. I remember telling myself, I actually said out loud, "Whatever you're asked to do here, you will do." I can't remember a time before that I ever felt that way, but I knew that this was the last stop on my train. If it didn't work here, then that was truly it. And I'm so glad and grateful that it has worked out. That journey from hating myself and feeling lost to being here now is hard to describe or even fathom, even though I lived it. It occurred to me the other day that perhaps the biggest thing that has happened by being here is the ability God has given us to erase the bad parts and start again. So usually I try to write a testimony from my own point of view, but it just came out this way. Did you have bad parenting and not a good childhood? God is your father, mother, and we can begin again now with him. Never felt at home anywhere? God has the perfect place ready for you now. Have a string of bad jobs and bosses? God is your employer and has a wonderful purpose for you. Coming from rocky human relationships? God is now and has always been your best friend and will teach you the real meaning of love. And in the readings tonight from Joel, it said that God will return what the locusts have eaten. And that has been true for me. So what Christian Science, this church, and practitioner support have given me is all that and more, and I'm very grateful for every part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne, Florida.
Joanne from Florida. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for those refreshing and inspiring readings tonight. This week I had a wonderful healing and learned a valuable lesson too. On Monday morning I pulled a muscle in my leg, which was very painful. I hadn't done anything physical to cause it, so I began to search my thought to see why it happened. In the lesson this week in Science and Health, it says, the patient feels ill, ruminates, and then the trial commences. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I ruminated about this and began my own trial. Finally, my husband wisely said to me, "Stop looking for a cause. It's nothing, just an aggressive suggestion." Well, that woke me up completely, and I remembered another sentence in the lesson from Science and Health. You consult your brain in order to remember what has hurt you, when your remedy lies in forgetting the whole thing. So that's what I did. I knew that the pain wasn't from God and therefore wasn't real, so I wasn't going to fall for it. I knew that God was governing me and had never stopped governing me. Sometime during the day, I realized that the pain was gone and my leg was perfectly fine. I'm so grateful to Mrs. Eddy for giving us Science and Health with its inspired truth from God. I'm grateful for this church where I've been taught Mrs. Eddy's pure Christian Science and for the loving help I'm receiving from practitioner. And thank you for this beautiful service tonight.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings and the music tonight. I want to express my gratitude to have a new driver's license. Due to new restrictions and changes in rules, address change, schedule challenges, and other paperwork details, the process is very complicated. I know that it was only by the grace of God and my practitioner's prayers that day I was able to leave with the license. After waiting an hour, it became clear that I had just missed a date cutoff by a matter of days that made my current documents no longer viable proof of residency. I had navigated the best I could the complicated paperwork rules, but it seemed like each document had some kind of issue and looked like it wasn't going to pass. They asked if I could go home to get different paperwork, but I was an hour and a half away from home. In good faith, I had done all I could do, and I knew they were doing their best. I got really quiet and held firmly to a line that was given to me by my practitioner. Quote, "The power of a right idea cannot be stopped." End quote. Not even red tape. I'm not quite sure when or how the shift took place, but suddenly I was cleared to go on to the next step. There was some more paperwork, but the original concerns were taken care of, and I was left with a greatly needed license so I could move forward to other necessary steps. There was really no room for delay. I had God's good work to do. I am very grateful that we have this science based on Jesus' teaching that are practical in our daily life. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave from Florida, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. About a week or so ago, I managed to hurt my big toe by banging it into something. There was swelling, and it was very painful when I walked. I asked a practitioner for help. She said she would pray, and during the week, she gave me many things to work with. She told me to handle the belief of accidents and to know that all movement is in mind, and when I'm walking, to work with the thought, God, I am taking a walk with you. She also told me to work with the hymn that starts, I walk with love along the way, and oh, it is a holy day. I did all this, and I'm happy to say that today I'm absolutely fine, walking normally. I'm grateful for the work of this practitioner, to be a member here, and to know that Christian Science does heal. And thank you for those readings.
Thank you. Bruce, go ahead, please.
I'm so happy and thankful for a wonderful watching point that's on our website this week. And it talks about how important it is to know the nothingness of evil, that we really can't make evil nothing because it is so already. But our job is to stand, and even though apparently in the middle of when it's screaming and yelling and doing all the things that he wants to do, unmoved, calmly confident, knowing that it is nothing. And it reminded me of a time of a number of years ago when I was working in a situation where there was a lot of accusations, and it was very unpleasant. People were blaming, and it was going back and forth all the time, and it seemed rather intense. And one day I finally went home and, dear God, tell me what I need to do here. And the message came clear, is to have it clear in your mind that you will not be disturbed, no matter what is said, no matter how aggressive it gets, you will not be disturbed. After all, aren't I God, and am I not present? Am I not in control, really? With that, I felt so good, so calm. And then when all the noise and accusations came the next day, I just stood there, just as happy as can be, knowing that God was in control, that my peace and confidence could not be shaken. And therefore, it came so clear that I didn't have to answer all these accusations. Evil couldn't throw a bunch of responsibilities on me that I had to answer to. I just had to be confident knowing that God was good. And even though the noise and accusations continued for a while, one thing it did is I kept my peace, and I felt the presence and confidence of a God. So I was able to continue with my work without any problems. And in time, all of that disturbing noise did come to an end. because nobody was responding to it or answering to it or giving it any life, because evil is indeed nothing. So I'm thankful for that watching point, thankful for Christian Science, and thank God we have a wonderful God that we can turn to. Those were marvelous readings, Elizabeth. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Pam from Virginia. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. I would like to express much gratitude for my membership in this incredible church. I cannot begin to say how much I have learned from all that is offered by this church to everyone who is in pursuit of the truth and the real teachings of Christian Science, as Mary Baker Eddy left for mankind. The Bible studies and the roundtable discussions provide so much to everyone, whether you are new to Christian Science or if you've been a lifelong student of this science of Christianity. The website provides everyone with powerful articles, most of them written by the early students and workers of Christian Science, some of them actually living in Mrs. Eddy's home and receiving teachings directly from her. I cannot say enough good things about the practitioners in this church. They are there for you and support you no matter when you call them, and they help you to grow as you work through whatever kind of problem you may be having. They expect healing and expect you to expect healing. There is a tremendous amount of love and unity expressed in this church as everyone works together to help bring the healing truth to all who are reaching out for it. I have also learned about watches and how important they are for all mankind, as Christ Jesus emphasized the importance of watching and praying continuously. And that is exactly what this church does. Members participate in watches weekly, and it is another means of growing in this science. My daughter has also been blessed by all the wonderful gifts this church has to offer. She too has now become a member. Our family is truly blessed by this church and all that it does for mankind. I cannot say enough good things about the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. Thank you, Elizabeth, for those wonderful supportive readings tonight, and I am grateful for all the testimonies so far and ones yet to come. Good evening.
Thank you. Day Day from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. This week's Bible lesson includes Isaiah 26, verse 3. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. I'm grateful for this reminder that I've been able to work with all week. With so much going on each day, I often feel as though I've lost my sense of peace. And I'm thankful that when I'm working to maintain or regain a sense of calm and confidence in good, I can think about my Father, call out to him, and talk to him. And when I do so, I feel his presence, and this reassures me of his love and protection. Through Christian Science, I've learned that God is taking care of every detail of my life. And whenever I feel discouraged, overwhelmed, pressured, afraid, and so on, the best thing that I can do is to trust in him just a bit more. I'm thankful for the opportunity to continue to practice this way each day as I grow and progress. Thank you so much for all that's going on in this church that's healing me and improving my life daily. Thank you so much for tonight's readings and for all the testimonies given so far and those yet to be given. I'm very grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Shardy.
Good evening, and thank you for the very powerful readings. Tonight, I would like to do an add-on from a testimony from last week, where someone talked about praying and using Mother's Evening Prayer by Mary Baker Eddy. It's a hymn, and he was healed of a cough, and later using another hymn written by Mary Baker Eddy, he was healed of sleeplessness. Recently, I sent a Mary Baker Eddy hymn called Saw Ye My Savior to 2 families who are mourning loved ones who have passed on. And then I'd like to say about long ago, it was a hymn by Mary Baker Eddy, hymn 160, called Satisfied. It goes a little bit like this. It matters not what be thy lot, so love doth guide, for storm or shine, pure peace is thine, whate'er betide. I said those words or sang them going to work every day for a long time when I was going through a very difficult situation. Everything turned out all right, and I had a big blessing at the end. I am very grateful for all of this, and I would also like to talk about that during that period, I had no resentment or anger, and I know that hymn and the hymns helped me tremendously. And now, when Jared plays the prelude, I can hardly keep from singing the words out loud. I thank God and Mary Baker Eddy. Her words are with us just as God's words are. And I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Susan, Massachusetts.
Susan from Massachusetts. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the readings tonight. This morning I woke up with a headache. In the past, I have had to take medication to get through the day when this happens. Today, I didn't want to do that because I know that the truth we are taught in Christian Science is the most effective healer. Thanks to learning at Plainfield Church to turn to God first thing in the morning, I started to know the truth. Also, I listened to the Plainfield lesson sermon. A passage that really spoke to me is from Science and Health by Mary Baker Eddy. It reads, "You say that indigestion, fatigue, sleeplessness cause distressed stomachs and aching heads. Then you consult your brain in order to remember what has hurt you, when your remedy lies in forgetting the whole thing." So I did that. I was able to get on with my day after that, and later on I realized that the headache was gone. It is hard for me to put into words how grateful I am for this church and to be learning more each day about the practical truth given to us from the Bible and Mary Baker Eddy's writings that can be applied to any problem. I am also especially grateful for the help I have received from a Plainfield practitioner. Thank you again for the wonderful service.
Thank you. Gary.
Sometimes it's good to look back and see what God has done for you. Sometimes I look back in awe at what God has done for this church. This church didn't just happen. It went through a lot, and it was the faithfulness of its members in striving to obey God, striving to let God guide them in everything that produced what we have today. When we were first excommunicated from the organization, we were hit with a lawsuit by the board of directors in Boston. Wanted to prevent us from calling ourselves Christian Scientists, if you can imagine that. And of course, they hired the biggest and most expensive law firm in New Jersey to file that suit against us. But God provided for us one of the best litigators in the state, right here in our own backyard. And he saw the cause, and he did what God directed him to do. And we successfully defended the right to call ourselves Christian Scientists. When we needed a printer to print our own magazine and quarterly and lessons, well, God provided a printer, a professional printer from New York who came, moved here, married one of our members, and served us very well and very faithfully for many years. When we needed an electrician to wire the church so that we could broadcast our services, God provided not just a good electrician, but a master electrical engineer. And he did a wonderful job. When we needed a new organist, well, it turned out we had a really good professional organist right here in our own Sunday school. And he did a wonderful job for many years. When we needed a new soloist, people said, nah, won't happen, you won't find a good soloist. Well, God provided a really good soloist, and she continues to serve us very well. Then when we needed a new organist, again, we were told, no, you're just not going to be able to find one in New Jersey. Well, God provided not one, but two excellent organists, one of whom is still playing for us and doing a wonderful, wonderful job. When we needed someone to oversee the church website, well, God provided somebody who had the skills and did a great job. I could go on and on and on. It could be a very long list. And to top it off, God provided us the funds, the money, to do all this. When we were hit with that lawsuit, we applied for a mortgage on the building, and we did not have to draw down any of the funds. We have never had to go into debt to pay for anything that God has asked us to do for Him. In each case, God brought to us what we needed when we needed it to do His job, to do His will. So I'm grateful to see God at work in this church. I'm grateful to see lives healed, lives changed. I'm grateful for the wonderful work that our practitioners are doing in attracting people to Christian Science, the true science that Mary Baker Eddy discovered. I don't know where I would be without this church and the Christian Science that is practiced here. I am so grateful to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you. Lil.
Thank you for those wonderful readings and the music. I was remembering a great blessing from God a few years ago regarding my teeth. I had a checkup at the dentist, and after a teeth cleaning, he said he wanted to take an x-ray and examine it for a possible root canal. He said he'd call me later. I called practitioner and explained the situation. The practitioner reminded me that my teeth are rooted and grounded in love, and to be sure I'm radiating and not absorbing, and that I can't become infected. Also, there's no spot where God is not. She also suggested reading, in Clear Correct Teaching, the article on infection. My thought was so uplifted and filled with positive expectancy after talking to the practitioner. Without a doubt, God was in control because the dentist never called back. What a healing. I'm so grateful for God and for practitioner help. I'm so grateful for Mary Baker Eddy's Pure Christian Science, which is a lifesaver and such a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig, go ahead, please.
Thank you for those readings and the beautiful music that we're inspired by. I love the lesson. And this, yesterday, I was doing a kind thing, helping somebody in my household. I was sitting a little odd, I guess, or wasn't worried about how I was sitting. And when I finished, my foot started aching. I thought it was ridiculous, but because I definitely wasn't God doing that, and nothing else bad could happen to me for doing good. So I remembered the lesson, and it talks about, and so many times we've been told that matter can't ache, swell, or be inflamed by a law of any kind. And God gave me my body to glorify Him. And I was just doing a kind thing. Well, but I stood with the truth, and I didn't accept the opinions of those in my household who prescribed heat and this and that. I said, well, it'll be just fine. It seemed to be such a simple thing, and God could easily heal it. Well, I went to bed and prayed my singing hymns to myself, and by morning I felt so much better, and the house commented how much better I appeared to be, and just holding fast to the truth that God made me perfect and I had no reason to be harmed. The blood and everything else flowed properly. It just disappeared, and I have no feeling of pain or limping or anything now. I thank God for giving us the true alternative, the true method of setting ourselves free. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon.
Last week, I woke up with a Charlie horse in the calf of my leg. It was very painful, but I knew it was not from God. I did not have to have it, and I started declaring the truth. It was feeling a little bit better, and then the thought came, did God send a horse named Charlie to be in my leg? And I started laughing, and it relaxed. Well, when I got up, I was limping a little bit, but I had God's work to do that day. And I said, you are a liar, and I'm not believing you. God did not make it. And I don't know how long it was, but within a very short time, the pain was completely gone. I am so grateful for Christian Science, for practitioner help, for what we're learning in this church, and Mary Baker Eddy, and God. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the beautiful readings tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the reassuring readings tonight. I'm so grateful for the many inspired articles that others were led to write years ago that continue to bless us all today. One such is by Herbert Rickey in 1948, which explains the difference in realizing our perfection in spite of or because of. He shares that when we strive to acknowledge our perfection in spite of what false theology teaches, what material medical beliefs of our neighbor, our relatives, and so on, it signifies our belief still in a material world and in an imperfect mortal man. Whereas our realizing perfection because of God's allness has more of fully embracing our perfection. Because as Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health, page 473, God is everywhere, and nothing apart from Him is present or has power. So realizing perfection in spite of the errors and false beliefs and so on makes a reality of the discords and makes one's effort as if we are always pulling ourselves out of the weight of materiality. On the other hand, the realizing of perfection because of God's allness leaves nothing for error, let's say, because it says, my Father is perfect, and that is why I am perfect, which concludes that there is in truth no discordant, imperfect world or being from which we are pulling ourselves. I'm so grateful for all these earlier workers, of course God for giving the inspiration, Christ Jesus, and if we all obey the law, I am all, we are blessed. So grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
Good evening. Tonight from our church website bulletin board, Virginia. Thank you so much today for today's October 4th roundtable with its vital information explaining why the Constitution of the United States of America is so important to protect this church's mission and the liberty of all. Thank you for all the instruction and inspiration. The healing testimony shared was much appreciated, as well as all the practical guidelines to keep one alert. The Sunday service was beautiful from beginning to end, complete with the joy of hearing Faith and Peter sing The Reality of Things. Many thanks to all. And then California, I don't know what more I could add. I guess that I have already signed up for Constitution 101. So much gratitude for all that I learn here. And then a couple, I'll read from Pennsylvania. In working through some of the items on the site tab on watching, I listened to a helpful testimony in which the following was referred to from Watch's Prayers and Arguments. Quote, Mrs. Eddy sought only to have God's will done on earth, and whatever would claim to interfere with that was the era that had to be handled. End quote. What a wonderful framework for any watch. Thank you. And also from the same person in Pennsylvania, during Sunday's roundtable, a testimony of an immediate and profound healing of alcoholism and smoking from the March 24, 1928 issue of the Christian Science Sentinel was read. I remembered that the practitioner involved was Doris Dufour Henty, Christian Scientist of England. Mrs. Henty wrote a book, Addresses and Other Writings on Christian Science, which is probably not well known. The testimony read also appears in Century of Christian Science Healing, pages 84 to 86. In the foreword to Mrs. Henty's book, it is included a sentence or two referencing the testimony there. The foreword to her book also states that on learning of Christian Science shortly after Mrs. Eddy's passing, Mrs. Henty spent some time in Boston. It speaks of her own early healing with James Neal as a practitioner and learning many things from Laura Sargent and Daisette McKenzie. And then a testimony from California. After reading the weekly lesson to my mother yesterday, I opened a book on sermons and articles on Christian Science by Doris White Evans and selected an article entitled The Early Days to read to her. To my amazement and also amusement, Mrs. Evans spoke of the importance of reading our textbooks. I wanted to share because this has been greatly occupying my thought. She states, Mrs. Evans states on page 11, quote, Today, science and health is here. It is ours. God has given it to us. The only hope the devil has is that we won't read it, or if we do, go over it in such a superficial manner that we fail to see the tremendous truths that are stated therein, that have for over 100 years healed the sick, raised the dead, brought prosperity and blessing to mankind, and will continue to do this great good forever, end quote. I thank God each day for his books of instruction. I thank God for finding my home in this Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, where the most important textbooks in my life have a place of honor and respect. And then I'm going to read, this was really a testimony given on our YouTube channel. It was in a response to a negative comment made to one of our audios. I got this woman's permission to read this, and she is from the state of Washington, and she's addressing this person. She says, all I can say, sir, is that I have lived over 60 plus years without this key, meaning key to the scriptures. I married, gave birth to children, but ended up raising them alone. It was hard. I started businesses and ended them, working for others and then for myself. I have chosen friends, mates, and companions like everyone else. I both sought loans of money and extended them, all without knowing there was valuable advice concerning all of the above in the Bible. I have studied what they call the Word all my life without understanding why we needed to know about much of it. The who begot who of the so-called Old Testament. It simply made no sense to me. How was it applicable to our so-called modern life? Most of the things written in it. Was it real? Was God real? If so, why did marriages fail? Why so much hypocrisy among persons claiming to know it? I turned to agnosticism, Eastern thought, and anti-Christian thought, self-thought, etc. Then studied all kinds of religious orders seeking answers to the issues confronting mankind, and even got baptized in one of them. I spent 16 years in deep study with them, 5 meetings a week. I started going door to door, seeking to share the limited wisdom I did find in that group. But still, I did not know enough of God to feel loved and valuable, just as I was. I went into it broken and came out still broken. In fact, my then life was destroyed by them. The jealousy, backbiting, and envy inside many churches destroys lives daily because they lack the knowledge of what the Bible is. You see, without the key of Christian Science, it is impossible to realize that we have the answer to all our problems. We have with us the absolute power to heal both our minds and bodies now, that God is all power and everywhere present at all times. In His care, our families, all relationships, businesses, and otherwise, our mental health, and that of those we care about, even our financial affairs, respond to this truth. We have been slayed at the gate because some have deliberately obscured the truth to be found in the Scripture. We were taught that we had to die first to then go to heaven to be free from all the above. Through this scientific approach, man has dominion over his body and all of his affairs. That is what meant Jesus when dying for all of us. His demonstration on the cross displayed that we can ascend above all the evils and the thoughts to be permanent, even in death. We can demonstrate the things He did as well. He showed us that nothing can separate us from God, but a lack of knowing. He said we would do even more than He had done. It made no sense until I started about 2 months ago to read Science and Health daily. I am not affiliated in any way with the Plainfield Church nor Christian Science, period. But after the 2020 shutdown, I, like many others, was terrified and needed comfort. I began to listen to this channel, and I started to read everything I could get out of it. And everything has changed in my life, and daily continues to change. For example, people I have reached out to me that I thought were lost to me, the man that I as a child bride married and earnestly and faithfully served as my husband for over 20 years, contacted me just a few days ago. The man who fathered our children and then abandoned us has begun calling me daily and nightly out of the blue. He has offered to buy me a home. Last night he randomly called as I was listening to the weekly Testimonials of Healing live broadcast on this channel and sang the entire song to me of a rainy night in Georgia. It was a song that once held a lot of meaning for us. The man has never offered any reason for what he did, nor has he ever acknowledged nor apologized to me nor his children. But he has now. This, because I had begun to let it go, I was able to begin forgiving him through learning that though we, his children and me, had suffered tremendously because of his behavior, no real nor lasting harm had occurred in Science. Christian Science was working on me, and as I worked day and night to release the hurt and disappointment and blame, it was and is healing everyone affiliated with me. Just this past Friday night, I finally got it as I released myself while listening to a Christian Science speaker giving a talk. There was just no reason to be hurt anymore. My ex called 9 times on Monday, beginning that morning. I could listen to him and not feel any disdain or hurt as he spoke. The something had become nothing after many years. It works, sir. It works without a word to anyone about what you are doing. There are so many healings going on in my life and affairs that I could bore you with this, but I have to share it anyway. I can hear in my right ear for the first time after 20 years. I had a stroke and lost my ability to work and to care for myself. Doctors wanted to assign me to a rest home, but my son dropped off his life and moved in with me and has done little else all these years. Then in May 2020, just by listening to the reader of Science and Health on the Plainfield site and tuning into the Plainfield Church weekly meetings, I awakened in June early one Sunday morning to tune into the Sunday service. Without thinking, I inserted my earbuds in both ears, thinking I was late. The service had started already. Laying there listening, I realized I was hearing in both ears. I usually cut off the right side with scissors because it was useless, just hanging there. But in utter disbelief, I removed the left side, and with tears flowing down the sides of my face, I was stunned, grateful but shocked. You see, sir, I had inundated myself with their sight, their humble sharing, and this had begun my healing. This was the encouragement to continue. I now demonstrate daily what was formerly impossible to me. Having the key now that has illumined my mind, my thoughts are different. It has changed all. Life has opened up for me. I never knew that so much was given to us through the Bible, because this dear Mary Baker Eddy and her labors, we can benefit ourselves. She suffered every type of ridicule and abuse to prove what she had uncovered and received. Having been granted the key herself, she then unselfishly sought to pass it on to us. It has survived under awful persecution until now. For you and me. I implore you to seek it out. It will cost you little to nothing and will open up everything, as it is doing for me and for others. That is the power of this truth. It certainly goes along with the beautiful readings for tonight about God's promise of restoration when we return to Him. I had heard someone say this week, if you are always looking at what you lost, you can't see what you already have. And how true that is when we're always staring at the hole in the donut. We are really so ungrateful for all the many blessings that God has bestowed on us. And then I thought too, in Mrs. Eddy's article of age, she was talking about sight and vision, but she said, free yourself from the thought you have lost your eyesight and Christian Science can regain it for you. Instead, Christian Science is the truth about your eyesight, which was never lost. And I love that because that's true of anything we think we have lost. If it is something that God has given us, it can't be lost. Truly, it can't. And it will come back if we know this, as the reading said tonight, if we return unto Him. If it doesn't come back in the exact same form, it will come back in some form or another, because that's the kind of God we have. He's a God, a restorer, a reclaimer of all things, and in truth, we could never lose what He has given us. There's a quote from the Blue Book that I love that has happened to help me many times on page 96. We never can know who is in reality a Christian Scientist until he has been tested under fire. Then what is left are dregs unfit for use till purged and purified. Or they are qualities that evil cannot destroy and are held by the power of God. I know many listening, and I know myself, when I've gone through just seems like unbearable times, perhaps it is some kind of a loss, a financial loss, physical pain, relationship problems, other things that seem perhaps unbearable. But if we can endure through that, holding the Father's hand, expecting a victorious outcome, then this is what will happen. We will be purified and purged, and what comes out is something wonderful and glorious. It is the gold as the dross drops off. I always loved what Mr.